You are enjoying yourself, of course. So just stay tuned.
This month, Nanki's listeners will be playing host to what's billed as the biggest international conference this century, the World Summit on Sustainable Development. South Africa welcoming over 60,000 people to debate nothing less than the future of the planet.
We want to host the summit because we want to work towards the eradication of poverty in the world. We want to make sure that our common destiny takes into account the well-being of everyone, the whole of humanity. And that's what is important for all of us and for South Africa.
South Africa's guests won't have to look far for the kind of poverty the summit's meant to eradicate. Just take a tour around the streets of Alex and talk to the people who live there.
We're living in a bad situation. The environment is all bad. 50 people living in one yard, it's not a bad experience at all. And sharing the toilet and using the same drain wherever, doing washing, dishes and everything, it's a bad experience for everybody, like health-wise and all those things.
We don't have even a tree for a shade. We don't have a green grass, so environment in Alexandria is disaster. Even a green grass, it's a privilege to live in a house that there's a green grass. Because since I was born, I never have a green grass in my yard.
Growing up in Alex, a bad environment with the danger of social breakdown.
Definitely growing up in Johannesburg is not an easy thing. First of all, you need a lot of family and the community support not to get drawn into, for example, antisocial behavior. So you find that the crime rate, for example, in Johannesburg is very high, not because the people of Johannesburg or the youth of Johannesburg are bad people, but because of this environment in which they are growing up. Let us take education. Many people advocate education, but they forget that shelter is the basis for good education. If a kid has been sleeping in a room with 80 other people, so even the night was uncomfortable, how do you expect a child to pay attention in school? Because health depends on where you live. So for the whole question of slum life, therefore, becomes almost a vicious circle.
What could the summit do for people like those in Alexandria?
I think this summit is really going to boost a lot of and unleash a lot of energies for those people who are already looking at what they can do to really take development into their hands. And I think that, for me, is a very positive thing, because there's lots of energy in the world to do something about poverty eradication. And if our political leadership can give a very clear direction and very clear guide, the whole world will embrace that program.
While the summit's being hosted by the South Africans, its political program has been drawn up by the United Nations, who dubbed it the Sustainable Development Summit. But just what is sustainable development?
Sustainable development is integrated development. It is where you build a societal approach which is owned locally, where there is a reason for it to happen, where trees are perceived as being of value to the community, not something that you cut down just to get wood, where cleanliness, where dealing with degradation of an environment is seen by the people as affecting their health, as affecting their possibilities.
I believe sustainable development means a development in which there's much greater equity than there is in today's form of development, much greater emphasis on maintaining the environment and the resource base, and much greater emphasis on an economic development that basically meets the needs of the poorest.
Simply, if you want to look at it in business terms, it's like running the Earth as Earth Incorporated, with a depreciation, amortization, and maintenance account, which simply means ensuring that through the production process, we do not destroy the underlying assets which continued development depends on.
Sustainable development was meant to have been the outcome of the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro 10 years ago, held at the climax of international concern about the global environment. Leaders around the world signed up to a series of agreements to put the global economy on a more sustainable footing. But those who were involved now have mixed feelings about whether those promises were delivered.
The disappointments are, of course, unluckily more than the positive signals. We have on the one side, of course, the huge increase in the gap between the rich and the poor, the social component. We have not decreased the problems of water. We have not decreased the extension rate of biodiversity. We have still the decrease of forest cover in the world. And especially, we even couldn't go in the positive direction concerning the economic cooperation.
You know, we didn't do it all. We didn't save the world at Rio. But we did provide the basis on which, if governments and others live up to what they agreed to do in Rio, we will be on a pathway to a more sustainable future. The achievements were very clearly that more than ever before, the world leaders, in fact more world leaders than up to that point had ever assembled around any particular issue, focused on the longer-term future of life on our planet.
Well, I must admit that either I was fooled or it was really coming from the heart. The statements of a large number of the heads of state in the last couple of days were very impressive, indicating that we are on the verge of a different type of world, that there will be cooperation, there will be support, there will be understanding, better understanding. And I was so thrilled with the fact that Maurice Strong managed to get all these people together, and they were committing themselves openly in this direction. And it never crossed my mind that this is a show, that we are on Broadway.
The promises of politicians to kids like those in Alex, just showbiz. Maybe it doesn't matter. Most people in the world are better off than 10 years ago. But old problems haven't gone away, and disturbing new trends have emerged for a new century.
Poverty continues to exist in tremendous ways. Globalization has taken place, and it's good there's economic improvements in some parts of the world, but it has created greater disparity in some parts of the world. The pandemic of HIV/AIDS has really torn apart some societies and made it more difficult for things to get done. Wars are on the increase in terms of the impact inside society. The victims today are largely civilian, not military anymore. So if you combine poverty, war, HIV/AIDS, and a lack of government and private sector leadership, it comes together to say too little has been accomplished.